right. And welcome back to another episode of Rough Sketch of Final Draft here in this amazing season 4 as we're doing deep dives on identity as we've covered that in this amazing season. We're dealing with self-exploration as we've covered that in many different videos so far. We've covered education and the importance about finding out who we truly are in so many different other ways through identity, through education, through our society. And we're just digging deep and we're keeping diving in. And we have another amazing guest visiting us today. And if he would like to introduce himself for the sake of the audience, please do so now, Pat.
Sure. My name is Pat Barber. I think I'm here because of some conversations around fatherhood. I'm a father of 4 young boys. I've been a coach for many years in the fitness space, and I do that professionally, and I coach coaches and have that fun stuff. But I think where you found me is in my little exploration in fatherhood, which is an account called the Fathers Guild, and I run that just talking about my thoughts on fatherhood. So I'm 38 years old. I live in Santa Cruz, California, and just kind of enjoy the process of deeper reflection and trying to figure out why I'm doing what I'm doing and do it better.
There we go. Well, blessings to you. I didn't know you were actually in Santa Cruz. We're in Monterey. So we're just a stone's throw away from
What
each
was
other.
that?
Good stuff. I said,
Oh, I
I didn't
lost
know
you.
that you were in Santa Cruz. Yeah, I didn't know that you were in Santa
I hope
Cruz.
it's
We're
not
in
my
Monterey.
internet.
Oh, it might be a jump. It's okay. If
Okay.
it does it, okay, got it. I'll cut that.
We're back.
Yeah, and we're back. I didn't know that you were in Santa Cruz, good sir. We're in Monterey. So we're just hop, skip, and a jump away from one another.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Are we
Is it
losing
cutting too
back and
much?
forth? Oh, no, I hear you now. I hear you now
Okay.
again. We're back.
Cool. There we go. And we're okay. All right.
Okay.
Oh my
So
God. Yeah.
did I hear that you were in Monterey?
I am, yeah. I was like, I didn't know you guys were in Santa Cruz. We're literally just in Monterey. We're a hop, skip, and a jump away from each other, friend.
Oh, man, that's great. I just went to Ad Alta the other day for some bread because it's such an amazing bakery.
Can't go wrong there, man. We had Lala Grill last night and just kind of enjoyed. Yeah. Wow.
Beautiful.
Okay. Well, if this all goes well and we end up having an episode Retournez-vous, then we'll have you in the studio for the next one because we're actually setting up a studio here in Monterey for season 5. Things are starting to go well. So thank you to this amazing community. And we'll have you in the studio next time.
That'd be amazing. That no delay needed for the internet. It'll be great.
That's right. Much better. Much better. You'll just have to let me know ahead of time what kind of requirements you have as a celebrity. Do you need like the peanuts all blue ones not touching the wood ones? So I'll get that already set for you. I will.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yep. All right. Well, and then let's kind of pivot, right? Because in the Rough Sketch of Final Draft motif, we get into the idea of really letting our hair down and really just kind of leaving the PhDs and the statuses at the door and really just kind of peeling back the layers of us. Pat, what got you started on this whole entire coaching journey and wanting to serve others in the way that you do, good sir? Let's start there.
Yeah, so coaching was something I kind of fell into from being an athlete. My first coaching gig was back when I was like 19. I graduated high school. I went down and went to LA and went to study exercise physiology, hated it, and then came back up and went to a local community college. And the year I graduated, my sport was volleyball. But when I graduated, the coach that was teaching the team, he left. And so when I came back the year after, they needed a new coach. And I was literally 1 year out from playing. And they're like, hey, can you come back and coach? And I'm like, I know this sport. Let's do it. So I went back and I started. These were all like young, friends of mine that were just a little bit younger. And they were on the team the year before. So the rapport was already built. You already had that like personal authority with them. And I had the intimacy of the game because like I understood that game. And then I got put into a role of positional authority, and it was like, hey, let's make these guys have a wonderful experience. And that was my first job coaching, and I really enjoyed it. I was very lucky to fall into such a situation, but that was it. That's how I got into it, and then it's been quite a journey from there. I got into CrossFit coaching and fitness coaching based off of I was filming and editing video for the company. I travel around. I would just train in CrossFit, and I got to go see some of the best coaches in the world. This is back in 2005, 6, 7, 8, when CrossFit was really very small. I mean, there was like 2 gyms worldwide, 3 gyms worldwide, and they were hosting these seminars to train coaches. And I got to be the guy behind the camera watching some of the best coaches in the world deliver what they did, because back then
Mm.
CrossFit would have the specialists come in and deliver their specialty. So you'd get,
Right.
a Titan like Mike Bergner come in and teach Olympic lifting, and then you'd get this guy named Buddy Lee, who's a amazing jump rope coach, come in and teach that, and you get Rob Wolf to come in and teach nutrition, and you'd have Mark
Yeah.
Ripito teaching powerlifting, and it was just like, so I got to learn from all these amazing coaches behind the camera.
Mm.
So that came on board as like a thing, and eventually I was like, can I coach the fitness stuff now? And they're like, sure. So I started doing that and at one of the local gyms here in Santa Cruz, and from there started teaching that at the local level, and then I got hired by seminar staff to teach the seminars, and then that process was like a very amazing opportunity to learn from people who were really incredible and cared a lot about the material, and then every
Yeah.
weekend would just sit back and rip you apart with how good you did, but also where you could improve. And it was just this constant process of being, hey, this is great, but this could be better. This is great, this could be better. And it's been
Yeah.
16 years of that. And now I find myself being the coaching developer, and that's what I do full time, is develop other coaches. And what's been great in this whole process is the mindset of a good coach or a coach and developer is centered on curiosity and exploration. I think if you take yourself too seriously and you think you figured it out, you're kind of screwed. So that process has been wonderful as an individual to come into something like fatherhood, which I have no experience in or had no experience in. It was like, okay, well, let's examine what's happening. Let's
Yeah.
look at some of the data. Let's try
Let's
some
assess.
stuff. Yeah, let's assess. Let's try some stuff. Let's see the outcomes of that process, and see if we can refine this and be better at it.
Mm.
Because there's not really a book on all this. I mean, there's 100 million books on all this, but there's no book on your children. I would say there's there's ideas and concepts, but what you're given is going to be a different thing.
Yeah. Chef's kiss. You're absolutely right. And there's so many things to unpack there. I love your philosophy. I love your outlook. At the same time, just jumping in that fact, if you're right, there are a million books. There isn't one literally written for Pat. You are writing it through your rough sketch, through your final draft, in that regard of your life, and you're doing it every day, coming back to the drawing board and getting a chance to rewrite and rescript and re-edit and do all those other kind of minutia bits that is, I say, the flavor of life in that regard. And I'll
Yeah.
circle back to another thing you just said that was beautiful, as well as the fact of you don't know it all, and don't take it too seriously. I mean, if we all take it too seriously, don't forget we don't make it out alive, right? So in that regard, worrying will give you something to do, but it's like being in a rocking chair. It literally just gives you something to do, but it gets you nowhere. So in that regard, as life is always unfolding ever in front of us, never get too bogged down, never get too worried about things, and have these kind of philosophical views that have a I'd say at least a 50-yard stare, at least 50 yards
Yeah.
out in front, maybe not a mile or two. But now you're an amazing coach, and you've had this incredible experience. As we're diving in deeper, I didn't know that you did that with the CrossFit games.
Yeah.
Shout outs to CrossFit in that regard. How was fatherhood being tied into Pat's amazing journey when you were going through all this, good sir? Were you already starting the fatherhood journey throughout this? I mean, obviously that was like 16 years ago. When did fatherhood kind of step into all of this at the same time?
Yeah. So, fatherhood, I had my first son when I was 27. So I'm 38 now.
Okay,
So he's 11.
awesome.
And, when you're in your mid to late 20s,
Yeah,
I can speak to myself and a lot of males that I know that you're the center of your universe, and
yeah,
it's very hard to look outside self. I mean, you can find a partner maybe, or maybe you can find a profession you're very passionate about, but for the most part, your lens that you view things through is self, and that's good in terms of taking care of yourself. And like, you see a lot of men through their 20s, like their focus is either taking care of themselves or wrecking themselves or having a good time or whatever it is, but it's very
yeah,
self-centered. And then when you have a child, it's a fundamental and immediate slap in the face and paradigm shift from self to something else. And you've got a piece of your being that is now external, and all of a sudden you're not the most important thing in the world. And that is, can be a quite an identity crisis, because you're like, all of a sudden you're not the center of the universe. And I think some people figure that out earlier in life. I did not. I needed to be slapped in the face with it quite hard by another being that was completely helpless, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was a coach at the time. I was a competitive athlete. I was, doing things on a professional level in many different regards. And um, I just really fought the idea of letting go of my identity through the
Yeah.
first couple years of parenthood. And that was, hard. It was, I loved becoming a father, and I immediately gained so much joy from it and so much perspective, but it was still a longer transition than I would have hoped. It was like a good 2-year period where you're grinding against letting go of your own identity of like, this is who I am in the world. It's like, you're not going to be able to be the same person. And if you want to be the same person, it's going to be a struggle more so than anything else. So
Mm.
that was hard, I think, through the first 3 years. But what I found was such a profound sense of growth that was almost forced upon me. Like, I
Yeah.
had to expand my framework for what was important, or even the hierarchy of what was important. It's like, I was a competitive athlete. Sleep was really important. Eating well was really important. Training the right amount was really important. And then all of that stuff was like, none of this is important. Like, in the grand scheme of things, like, none of this
Yeah.
stuff matters. Like, that
Oh,
what
nice.
matters is keeping this little nugget alive, and
Yeah.
caring for and loving my wife and my child. And I do think that there's a sense of, you still need to take care of yourself so you're not sick and dying. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it was like letting go of all the control of like, I'm going to get this number of sleep, and I'm going to eat this way, and I'm going to train this much, and I'm going to be able to go this hard, because it's like,
Yeah.
you can't, like, you just physiologically can't, like, you're waking up 7 times in the middle of the night, and it's like, and the
Yeah.
more you fight that, the shittier the experience. I apologize for swearing, but the more
No,
terrible
no.
the experience.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but once you let go of it, once you start to accept it, and you're like, I'm gonna be okay. Like,
Yeah.
this childhood time is only so long, and
Yeah.
the letting go of that control was for me, such a needed thing to be the man I knew I could be and wanted to be, but didn't have a reason to before. So
Yeah.
it was good. It was hard, but it was good.
I love it, Pat. Let's peel back some of those layers. What were some of the things that you found out about Pat? What were some of the things you found out about you in those moments, in those first 3 years, buddy, that you didn't know?
Well, I really deeply came to understand very quickly that I was not looking out for the people in my life before myself. I always prioritized me.
Yeah.
And whether I was in a relationship or a business relationship or a family relationship, like, I would look after me. And that in my deeper reflection and work that I've done since,
Yeah.
kind of centers a bit in how I was raised, in a bit of like, I was kind of the golden child, and I could do no wrong in my mom's eyes, and like, and so like, I never really had to look at anyone else. Like, it was just me. In addition
Yeah.
to that, my parents separated when I was 11, and part
Mm.
of that work, going back and looking at it, like, I couldn't remember any trauma. I couldn't remember anything that was particularly bad about that. My
Yeah.
parents were still amicable. They're still both in my life. They're still wonderful
Mm.
people. They clearly loved me. I had so much going, but part of that experience, as I worked back, it was centered around, um, basically being like, I'm alone.
Yeah.
I'm alone in this world, and I'm going to take care of me. And I'm going to be okay, because I'm going to take
Yeah.
care of me, but I'm alone. So like, so I lost some of that trust, or some of that view of the rest of the world.
Mm.
And that compartmentalized into, I was either going to be always happy, or I was going to be angry. Like, those are my two levels of emotion that I had. And
Two
there's
extremes.
if you
Yeah.
didn't know, there's more emotions than happy and angry. There's a big middle spectrum. So So I kind of like suppressed those other pieces and was just like, I'm going to go on either end of the spectrum. And
Right.
that worked for my life up to that point in
Mm.
time. But when
Yeah.
you, when I had kids and when you start to realize, and when I had to be confronted with this, hey, you're either happy or angry and you
Yeah.
only look out for self, like that,
Yeah.
that craps on a relationship that doesn't allow you to raise your kids well. And then that makes it so you walk through the world relatively miserable,
Mm.
because living a life of service to others is primarily where we find peace. It's like, it's where you can kind of dig in and find meaning, is in this
Yeah.
bit of service to others. Now, I'm
Yeah.
going to put a caveat onto that, is to, if you don't ever take care of yourself, it can be sickly if you never take care of yourself and you just service
Yeah.
others. So I just
Yeah.
want to clarify that, but that's not my journey. My
Good
journey
call.
was,
Yeah.
my journey is, I'm always taking care of self. How can
Yeah.
I go off and find a way to service others and see what that does for them, and experience that kind of meaning, and that kids force that. And I realized that in myself, that I wasn't doing that, even though I was a coach, even though I
Yeah.
cared for people, and even though I did stuff, that was just kind of the profession I found myself in. But
Yeah.
like, even like little things like setting a dinner table, like
Mm.
I would, food would go out, I'd walk over, I'd grab my fork from the the tray of forks, and I'd walk over and I'd sit down and I'd look around and no one would have any silverware. And it's like,
Right.
nothing in my head was like, how's everybody else doing? It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just like, are
Yeah.
you good? Then things are
Mm. Yeah.
good.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but those little things happen over and over and over again, of like,
Sure.
as a new parent, that's what I found out about me, and it was profound, and it was
I think it's
difficult, and it was
wonderful. I really, really do.
awesome, all in the same go.
Yeah. The journey of this hyper individualism that
Yeah.
we even have in our society as of today, that we keep on
Yeah.
pumping. That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I find fatherhood is such an amazing gift in that regard, that is also the missed portion of this whole entire dialectic and dialogue that is taking place in the world sphere today. And honestly, safe space in our community here in this wonderful podcast, we kind of dip our pinky toe in it every now and again. For the most part, I want this community always to be a respite, a refuge of somewhere to go, to not have to listen to all that kind of stuff. However, the world is starting to have so much of that content start to happen. It is bubbling over into all areas of, even where, if you want to sit and kind of just lounge and try and stay away from the rest of it, it does bubble into it. And I'd say a few key points about some of the things that you were sharing, and they resonate in the fact of even quoting someone like the book The Great Gatsby, in the regard that the character actually had said in the actual storyline written, is he always knew that he could climb. He could climb forever as long as he would climb alone. And these types of ideologies, get into us as men, and we think we can keep on going, and we can be this hyper individualistic warrior that doesn't need anybody, doesn't need anything. But we find out that we do, that this idea of individualism really is this sword and shield that we kind of protect our heart from, because from a young age, as young men, we're not necessarily always, I would say, coaxed or even kind of supported in the idea that we should have feelings and that other people do matter. It really does just genuinely become, we have to look out for ourselves because our job is to look out for other people. And I think what you just said is also, when you were younger, you hadn't thought about it. The reason, in the sense of like whether or not you had to think about other people. And as men, right, just to the whole entire, everyone listening, holding space and validating that for all of us in our journey. Most of us as men have to think about ourselves, because our job is to, if I'm good, then I can pick up my sword and shield and protect mom and dad, protect my brothers and sisters, protect my friends and family. And I always find that that is a very interesting thing that people miss about the journey of what it's like to be a man. Because if you go out into public and you're with your sister, you're with your mother, you're with your wife or your girlfriend, it's the man's job, if anything goes not happy within a quick minute at a restaurant or at a bar, it's a man's job to jump in there and to be the guy, the Johnny on the spot. So that's a lot of pressure that really never leaves us, because as this world gets increasingly more dangerous in that regard, especially as you start having wonderful little children that we're going to be looking out for, our job is never done. It doesn't matter. And now you're not just even worried about whether or not the world at large is after your kids. Just the staircase, the door slamming on their little fingers or their little toes, right? The whole entire house ends up becoming a spot where you're concerned and you're caring about your children. And I want the whole entire audience out there to always have a heart, obviously understand that it's hard on both sides, on the mothers and the fathers. However, we're hearing a lot about the mother side. it's due course to obviously have a loving conversation and a kind, vulnerable sense about the fatherhood side. And just last thing to key in there with what you were saying that just resonates with my heart is the idea about giving service to others. And here on this channel, we've said it a few times, and it's something that I've always enjoyed kind of sharing, and we'll kind of share it again now. And this is obviously as you and I are bonding and creating our friendship, my good friend. It's something about deserving and serving. The word serving is in deserve. So I always, whenever I coach individuals, the only time that you ever get into a mindset of deserving and feeling like you deserve is once you give service to someone else. Once you serve, that's when you deserve. And until then, you've got an unbalanced bond right there going on. So that's something always that is a beautiful thing in that coaching world of being a great father and being a great coach. So my hat's off to you. Chef's kiss to you, Pat. And let's just kind of keep going. Where does this beautiful journey of being a coach and a father, how did those principles of being a great coach lean into you being a great father and just kind of, weaving into one another? How did that work for you?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's been a bit of an interesting journey because I think a lot of the coaching side of things is when you're dealing with adults, it's figuring out ways to communicate to them how
Yeah.
to do things, right? So both, and if you know anything about CrossFit, there's a lot of different movements, and the
Yeah.
goal is to be pretty good at all of the movements. So you're taking like,
Yeah.
total non-athletes. You're taking people who sit behind a computer all day, and you're trying to teach them like the most complex Olympic lift in the world. And it's like, how can you
Right.
break down something that complex and make it digestible for an individual? So all of your
Yeah.
thoughts go into how can I most effectively communicate complex ideas into a simple way. And but people have in the coaching realm have paid you to get them better. So you do that, and they're willing to listen, and they want to listen because they're there. You're in a position of both positional and personal authority. They want to
Yeah.
listen to you, and you're in a place where they're paid you to listen. Like,
Yeah.
so it comes in efficiency of language. It comes in your depth of knowledge. It comes in all of that stuff. So, and it's in a very short time frame. They give you an hour a day, maybe a couple days
Yeah.
a week to really deliver this information. So it's a very specific task, so to speak. But kids, I found, are not that at all. And kids, not only do they not know anything, like they look like when they're born, they know nothing. They're literally a ball of mush. They
Yeah.
also very rarely want to sit and listen to what you have to say if you're trying to teach them something. If you're like, let me teach you this, they're like, shut up, I want to go play. But what they do perfectly is they mimic exactly who you are. So they mimic how you carry yourself. They mimic how you live. They mimic how you speak to other people. They are the carbon copy of all the best parts of you and all the worst parts of you. So as a coach, I went into fatherhood being like, I'm going to coach. Realized very quickly that coaching is not what I'm doing through the first long period of their life. They're not
Right.
paying me to be here. They came into this world because I brought them here. And
That's
now
right.
and now they don't like, should they want to listen to me? Yeah, I should treat them in such a way where they want to listen. I should be
Yeah.
interesting enough that what I do, they're like, dang, dad's awesome. But
Yeah.
I'm not coaching them. I'm not teaching them stuff unless they're like, hey, dad, how do I do this? In which case,
Right.
I'm happy to help. But what
Yeah.
I have noticed is that the more work I put on myself to be the
Mm.
man that I want them to be,
Yeah.
that's what happens. That's the thing that works. That's the coaching that works, is like, I'm going to be a lot better to the world. And then I watch it play out in my kids and I'm like, boom, I did it.
Yeah.
So I would say what I learned from that coaching process is that you can't coach kids quite the same way. And because I was already such an effective coach, and when I threw out my cues and I did my lines, and I very quickly saw the response of like, this doesn't work. I had to be like, okay, well, what
Yeah.
are they doing? And I was able to do that. And that's kind of a lot of the messaging I like to put through the Fathers Guild stuff is like, this is my journey. This is what I'm doing for myself to be a better
Yeah.
man, and how I'm
Right.
approaching these situations, because I think that that's the greatest impact we can have. Is not necessarily, we're not coaching other adults, we're raising kids, which is a different, it's a different framework.
Yeah. Yeah. Part and parcel, related at the same time, not exact transfer
Correct.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And again, obviously, I'm seeking to obviously inform our audience. Your audience is going to know, how did the Fathers Guild gestate? Where's the genesis in that? Maybe give us the anecdotal, quicker version, because obviously we've covered so much of it. Obviously, it seems like these are all interrelated. Just when did that kind of come to fruition for you?
Well, the Fathers Guild's a weird one for me, that
Yeah.
I even have anybody there following me, because like I've made content in fitness for years, like
Yeah.
years and years and years. And I've made thousands of videos that are all behind paywalls and all this other stuff. And like, I'm
Yeah.
a true expert when it comes to fitness. Like, you want to talk fitness, I can get you to do whatever you want. Like it's not a hard subject. The fact that it's
Yeah.
so difficult and people make it really difficult blows my mind.
Agreed.
But fatherhood, I'm not an expert. I'm just a dad. Like,
Yeah.
I'm an introspective father who likes to think, and I have
Yeah.
the freedom to do so, because so much of my life is wonderful. Like, so many of my basic needs, when we talk about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are just met to the point where
Yeah.
I can be self-critical and it's not damaging to me. I think there's
Hmm.
plenty of people who are self-critical and it's extremely damaging. And so they see me sitting and thinking about what I'm doing, and they're like, just be in the moment. Just follow. It's like, don't worry. I was in the moment, but after the fact, I sat and thought about it because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So this process around fatherhood and what the Fathers Guild was like, I'm passionate about being a father because I think it's a endlessly fascinating subject. And I see
Hmm.
it, the information that's put out there on fatherhood, to me, falls in one of two categories. It's either really extreme on the side of like rah manliness, like,
Oh, sure.
like own everything. You like
Yeah.
never have emotions, never have feelings, carry
Yeah.
all the burden. Or it's on the other side where it's like super free love hippie, and it's like, yeah, just let kids do whatever they want, man. Just let them be, and blah, blah. And I'm like, there's a middle ground. There's a big middle ground. And I love some of what you're saying over here. And I
Yeah.
love some of what you're saying over here. But a lot of what you're saying is crazy. And I'm like, there's got to
Yeah.
be a conversation in the middle. And I felt like that wasn't
Yeah.
happening.
Hmm.
So
Agreed.
I started the Fathers Guild as kind of like a forward facing journal. It was just like a
Yeah.
video journal for like ideas that I had. I'm going to try
Hmm.
this. And I was
Yeah.
just making, or here's my thoughts on this piece of marriage or whatever it is, because being married is part of fatherhood too.
Yeah.
And well, it depends on the situation that you're in, but it's part of the
Right.
reality of my situation.
Yes. Yes.
But
Minus the caveat.
yeah, minus the caveats. But
Yeah.
the thing that happened was, it was like, this was just like a private little account, not a private, but it was public, but it was just like, I had 300 people following it that were all friends of mine, and
Yeah.
then what happened was a few posts went really viral.
Okay.
And since all of the content was just centered around fatherhood, it was like, all of a sudden now there's like 60,000 people there. And I'm like, huh? Like, this
Yeah.
is, I like it. It's cool, but
Yeah.
it's not
Wow.
a business for me. It's not this is just like, this is my forward facing journal that a bunch of people have opinions on, which I find fascinating. Like there's people who just come in straight to just troll, and I'm like, great, good for you, man. Like, it's fascinating that you're angry enough to comment on a random social post. Like, how
Right.
miserable your life must be to comment on a guy who's pondering how to be a better father. Like, that's
Yeah.
fascinating to me. But
Way to go. Yeah.
it's like, dude, way to go. But
Yeah.
that's what the Fathers Guild is it's just my collection on my thoughts on fatherhood, and I don't ever want to be the guy being like, hey, you have to do it this way, but I want to make the content of like, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm thinking. But sometimes like little things spur me off to where I'm like, I'm very passionate about a lot of this, but I try to
Yeah.
phrase it in a way that it can be heard, because
Yeah.
there's things like I just saw a video and yesterday, and it no, I didn't see a video. I read an article, and it pissed me off so much that
There
I
we go.
sat down and was just fuming for like 4 hours. And I was like, what the hell? So I filmed like 11 videos, like 11 separate little videos, but they're
Oh
all
boy.
so angry. Like I'm so
Yeah.
mad in the videos that I'm like, I don't know if I want to post any of these. Like
Yeah.
not
Sure.
because I don't think it's valuable, but I think it's too
Right.
one-sided in the anger that's behind it. And
Yeah.
there are multiple sides to this story, but it's just, so I don't know. I don't know what the Father's Guild is going to be or where it's going to go, but that's what it is. It's just my thoughts on fatherhood, and I've had so many amazing direct messages from people being like, "Hey, I tried this one thing and
Yeah.
my relationship's better with my kid." And I'm like, "No way."
Yeah.
I've had people message me being like, "I have a strange son who's 21 years old, and I just got back into his life, and I'm using this as a base to do so." And it's like just amazing direct messages. So yeah.
I I love it. For everyone who's listening, go check out Pat's content. We'll have the links down below. But at the same time, I'm just going to obviously make this statement in the middle of this on the internet. Once it's there forever. I find your content incredible. I have yet to even be a father. I would love to, by the way, universe. One day I want to be a good father. I was raised by an amazing father. And by being raised by one, I can see one. It's one of the reasons why your content resonated with me. Your fitnesses abound.
Huh.
Absolutely. Chef's kiss. It's most definitely known to me. No problem there. But I mean, like, literally, in that sense, like, you are an amazing father. And circling back to also what you said, to give credit where credit is due, validating 100%, even from a psychological standpoint, even with my career in legal and everything else like that in my life, and NLP and hypnosis, the idea of what you're saying is mirroring, right? That's what you said before, is the fact that the children are literally mirroring. It's a monkey see, monkey do. It is the truth of what we do as human beings. And fathers are looking for other fathers. And the last time I checked, we're in our 30s in that regard. So in that sense, like, we're literally looking for role models too. Our role models on the TV who used to be there and used to be in society and used to be in our, school houses and things like that. We're not just sitting here pointing fingers, because as soon as you point one finger, you got three back at you. I'm simply saying, let's actually explain without complaining, right? We're not complaining, we're explaining how society got this way. We need role models. We need individuals to be able to rub shoulders up against and check out and mimic and look at and see what they're doing and see what they're doing. Because I'm with you. Again, to keep on going down the whole entire list of patent by numbers here to validate what you were just sharing and kind of pace it back to share that I was listening, and also just the juice of what you just got done saying. We're in this weird chasm where on one side of the spectrum we hear, I'm going to say it, and it's never even really a phrase that I really like using too much, but the toxic masculinity thing. Have no
Sure.
emotions, own everything, have 50 women on your speed dial on your phone, be married to a woman that is just filled with all the Botox, all the fake stuff, all the
Yeah.
fluff, all the front and back, and the lips and
Yeah.
the face, but be
Yeah.
married to her for some reason. She's cheating on you, you're cheating on her. Have 20 kids and own 5 businesses and have your
Mhm.
Maserati. That's
That
not
is.
healthy. I'm going to say that's toxic. I'm going to say that is like safe space. I hate that phrase, but that is toxic.
Yeah.
And then what we said, the other side of the chasm is this. I'm going to use another phrase that I never really like using, though. These paint the picture. These aren't our words that we created. We're using the society created ones, the beta side, where it's so soft and lovey and cuddly and happy,
Yeah.
and never once say a bad word or ever put a standard on your child and say go to bed by 9 o'clock, because you never want little Starfire, which is the name of the child for some reason. um, your name Starfire, it's a great name in that regard, but we all know what we're talking about, that I will never put any restrictions on them, and I let them
Yeah.
eat whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. That's also not good. So there has to be some sort of middle ground, right? Let's just kind
Right.
of like create that visualization for anyone listening, anyone here watching me do this with the hands. There has to be something in the middle. There has to be. And there's
Yeah.
content like yours and content that is out there that is starting to circumnavigate this coalescence of these ideas that are starting to bring together a better capitulation of what fatherhood, manhood can be, is. I think we lost sight of it in the West quite a while ago, and we're the pioneers, kind of bringing it back and maybe re-chiseling and resculpting the statue. Right, Arnold a long time ago in
Yeah.
his documentary or whatever said that bodybuilding's like sculpting, and if I want this and I want that, I put it there, and we got to sculpt this whole entire ideology of what fatherhood is. I think you're doing
Yeah.
a fantastic job. I'll leave it there open to you to have any comments on that, but I really do think you're doing the good work, Pat.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, I'm winging it, as many are, but I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. Like I watch it in my children, and I watch what they have, and I look at my own life, and I look at the joy I'm able to have, and I look at the gratitude I have for like just very basic moments, and I'm like, more people should have this. More people, like I want more people to have what I have, and that's like the essence of
Mm,
the channel for the Fathers Guild is like I want more people to be as you know I want more people to feel like they're getting the most out of this process of fatherhood. I mean, the statement I said on my Instagram a while ago was just like, I want to leave fatherhood with no regrets. Like, I don't
mm,
want to be the person who's on his deathbed being like, I wish I spent more time with my kids. It's like, and
yeah,
it's never going to happen. I'm always going to have things that I wish I did differently. That's not the point. But
sure,
it's like
yeah,
yeah. I'm very grateful for the things that I was given, and I'm always trying to work it back to its like root piece, right? Like I
mm,
want to know like what is it that makes me capable to do this and feel the way I do, and others not, and I'm always searching. So that's the thing that I'm like, what can I give my kids that actually makes a difference in their long-term life? And
yeah,
I'm right now on this bent that I think the biggest thing is like unconditional love. Like if we're gonna set a foundation, it's just like everything else can be built off of it for increased level of success later in life. Success being able to move through the world and like take it all in and
yeah,
enjoy this human experience. I
yeah,
think a very foundation of at least one parent who gave them unconditional love,
mm,
and it was very clear and it was stated often, will set a child up for success. And there's
mm,
going to be valleys and shit that they go through in their lives, and they might hit very traumatic things. But I think if
yeah,
I see a commonality amongst people I know who are, you know, successful as people, not necessarily financially successful, but just successful in their ability to navigate the world and have this
yeah,
underlying sense of like wellness, like they're like, I'm okay. They know if they work it far enough back, mom loved me or dad loved me. And like, that doesn't mean they're not going to face stuff, but like on a
yeah,
very basic level, do that. Like a very basic level. I don't care about all the other actions. Like just express love, make it unconditional, and
yeah,
just do that. And then there's a
yeah,
lot of other nuance around that, and like things like, hey, here's how food works. Here's how here's how you work really hard. Here's how you love your mom. Here's how you communicate. Here, like there's all of the other pieces, but let's start with just unconditional love. And
yeah.
I think that to me, when I work it far enough back, that's the thing I'm on right now, is like, I think that's a big piece. Let's start there.
I love it. Yeah, at least have a baseline in that regard, and that leads into kind of the idea of what references, in that sense, when you were on this journey. Stoicism is out there. There's Marcus Aurelius's works, obviously, with the meditations, which are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Just kissed anyone that's going on that rabbit hole. Anyone who's going to maybe dive into Descartes or some sort of maybe poetry by like a Whitman or anything else in that regard. Where does Pat find solace, and where do you sometimes recommend individuals who are just kind of getting started on their journey? Where does that happen?
Yeah. I think I've read a number of books, and I really appreciate the kind of self-help space, and
Yeah.
I've dug into many things. I think a lot of the more esoteric things that, like even Marcus Aurelius' stuff, like, have you read the new translations of Meditations by Gregory Hayes? So
Yes.
Gregory, if you're gonna read Meditations, read Gregory Hayes's version, because it's way more digestible than the other ones.
Yeah.
um, but like those you kind of have to be in the right mindset to take, like you have to already be in like a good place to take on board
Yeah.
that information.
Granted.
And you're only taking like little bits and pieces from all these. None of them are like the go-to Bible that's like, this is it, it's all
Yeah.
here.
This one. Yeah.
Yeah, this one, no, it's all like part of the larger collective.
Yeah.
I think a couple that really resonated with me were the whole brain child was one.
Mm.
That was a really good one that talked about the different sides of the brain and the different types of kids. And the goal was to not be one or the other, but it's more of like you're in a boat and there's two banks and you don't want to be on one
Yeah.
bank or the other. You want to kind of keep traveling down the river and how to foster that other side. That
Wow.
was written by neuroscientists. And I think I have a hard time with some of the more sciencey ones, because the sciencey ones tend to speak in finality. They tend to be like,
Yeah.
this study showed this, so this means this, which is like,
Mm.
which is the like the opposite of science. Like science is
Yeah.
about experimentation and like, here's a
Right.
hypothesis and we think
Yeah.
this is tending to do this, but wow, we should
Yeah.
continue to look at it. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's fascinating that science has become this hammer that we whack everything with and be like, no, this is how it is.
No. Yeah. This one
Yeah.
study did this one thing, and that's
Yeah.
it. It will
And
never
that's
do anything
it.
different. Yeah.
No
Yeah. Yeah.
different. And there's no variance here, but like,
Yeah.
so, so the Whole Brain Child was good. I think one of the ones that really nailed it for me was, God, what's that freaking book called? It's so good. It's, no, not, what is it? Hunt, Gather, Parent.
Ooh. Okay. A good one.
Hunt, Gather, Parent is a great one, and it got a lot of flack from the conventional parenting community. But it is a fantastic one. It was a woman who was a researcher and writer, and she had this whole vision of what parenthood would be like. And then she had a kid, and it was miserable, and she was miserable, and she was following all the books, and she was doing all this stuff, and she just like was just struggling. And at the time, she was writing these articles on. It was like this in many different third world countries or countries that were more tribal in their ways of being, and she noticed the relationship in these countries that were not the Western world from parents to children were very different in terms of how those were navigated and what we were told was normal or not normal, and they were very not normal. And so she traveled to all these more tribal cultures and talked with them about how they raised kids and tried to take pieces from that and put it all together in a book. Like things like there's this Inuit culture where it's like they believe the main difference between parents or adults and children is the ability to regulate your emotions. So what defines a child as a child is the fact that they can't regulate their emotions. When something happens, they're only responsive. And so all of the parents in these cultures are like deadpan to a T in the midst of any sort of tumultuous strife. Like the kid knocks something over, blah, blah. You never lose it because you're like, that's what children do. So there's a lot of grace given to kids. And I was like, that mindset is so fantastic of like, what makes an adult an adult is that you can regulate your emotions. What makes a kid is that they can't. So when they don't regulate their emotions, you don't freak out. You go, that's a kid. That's what they do. Now, can we work to navigate them through this? It's very different. So like the whole brain, that one's great. Hunt, Gather, Parent. But there's a bunch of other big takeaways from that. So those two are specific parenting books. I think all of Brené Brown's books are fantastic. I think the books from Simon Sinek on leadership work really well into building the framework around leadership and understanding what makes a good leader. Because in essence, we as fathers, by design, are one of the leaders in the house. And I think those are all fantastic. That being said, I also recently read The Intentional Father. And The Intentional Father is written by a priest who's also a father. He's a Catholic priest, and it talks all about ritual and going through setting up very meaningful transitions in kids' lives. And it's really good. I'm not faith-based myself, but it's written through that lens, but it was also just a fantastic bit of work to talk about the framework for raising young men. Lots of good stuff.
That's good stuff. No, that's a whole cornucopia of just good stuff in that regard. Also with Simon Sinek, you're a man after my own heart. Start With Why is one of my absolute favorites. So
Simon's so interesting because I really love him and I love his books, but
Yeah.
he kind of flirts on this line of like just saying the key words and not
Uh,
offering the how to do it. So I'm like,
yeah.
so like when you look at clinical psychology and you look at like what you like the actual steps of doing, there's not
Yeah.
that much there. So
Yeah.
so so he's very shiny on the front end of like, dude, like this is how
Yeah.
leaders work and blah blah blah. It's like, but how? Like, how do you
Wow.
do it, Simon?
Yeah.
Like
It achieves. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
no, but
find him, I love him, but I'm always like, oh, I wish you would give me like tangible steps, like do this. I mean, and for like to to counter that, like I would say
yeah.
there's someone more like Jordan Peterson in 12 Rules for
Ooh,
Life, where it's like,
bingo.
it's just like, do this, like
Yep.
clean your room. Like it's a
Yep.
very literal thing. It's like a step, do it. And
Yeah.
then it's like, and
Yeah.
then do this. It's not
Right.
esoteric. It's not just a fancy word. It's like, do it, take action. And I think that that's where we get into some interesting stuff of people who say the shiny thing, but don't have the tangible step afterwards. And
Yeah. The meat and potatoes. Yeah.
I would argue that social media is so performative in that nature. And that's one of the things that I have a hard time with is like, I'm contributing to this space of like, hey, here's some information, but it's like, I want you to take a step. I want you
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can listen to it. You can like my post. You can even comment. That means
Yeah.
nothing to me. That means
True.
nothing. What means something is if you do something different. If you
Yeah.
go out and you walk over to your son and you give him a hug and you tell him you love him, that means something. Like all of the
Agreed.
thought ideas and the meditation and like, I mean, meditation is good, but
Sure.
like if you're not doing, then you're not living. Like
Yeah.
you gotta like take the information, put the phone down and go do. And we get tricked into this constant scroll of like, I
Yeah.
think I'm doing, but you're not doing
Yeah.
anything. You're not taking
Right.
any steps. You're just sitting there.
I agree. And we'll go back even to quoting Socrates. Like he said, be weary of a busy life
Yeah.
because you can just get busy being busy and you're not
Mhm.
achieving anything. You've got this list and you've got your whole entire day planned of things that you're going to do, but you're not effectively doing each item that's on that list. So you're completing a task versus thinking of it as you're taking a step towards your own personal growth in your day and really being at one with that actual process. I'm with you on the
Mhm.
Simon Sinek and the Jordan Peterson thing. I'll say that Jordan Peterson would be the Socrates. He's the
Yeah.
and provide forgiveness universe for my proverbialness here though. He's the ugly truth in that regard, in that
Yeah.
sense, right? He's the uglier truth, and then there's this more polished Aristotelian kind of version that's coming out of Simon Sinek, which is the corporate side.
Right.
But they're saying the same message, but one is actually saying it the visceral way, and the other one's
Yeah.
saying it this way. And then with social media, we
Ah,
get caught in this rigmarole of does it need to look flashy and sound flashy, but is almost kind of an empty suit. It's
right.
pointing you in the right direction at least. Like blessings to where it needs to be and giving credit where credit needs to be given. It's pointing still in the right direction of aim towards something that's higher. But then the actual execution of it isn't necessarily able to live up to the standard of what it's trying to sell. The
Right.
advertisement is really, really well done. The cheeseburger looks good, but we all know how cheeseburger photos are made for Burger King and everything else like that nowadays. It's all done with photographs and Photoshop and fake pieces of plastic that were melted. That cheese never looks like that. That's not real. So in that sense, if you're not doing the actual visceral work, like you're saying, Pat, then what are we're supposed to inspire change.
Right.
That's what we're actually
Right.
trying to do, not just be a
Right.
follower, not just give us a comment, we love you for it. I'm with you, I'm absolutely with you. I'm
Right.
that resonates heavy with my heart. Do you have anything else to add with that part?
No. No.
No, okay. I know, because I think we could have an episode on that. We'll save that for episode 2 when you come on, right? Okay.
Sure. Sounds good.
But yeah. Well, and just in that sense, again, we're covering a lot of things. We've got a whole bunch of different kind of irons on the fires here, and this wonderful, amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough for this journey that we've kind of gone through. What are some of the things that you find to be the most, I would say, fantastic? And I don't mean to use that in a pejorative. I mean, really, what do you think that are some of the most fantastic elements about being a father? I know there could probably be a whole other episode on that, but share some of your favorite ones, maybe your top 10, top 5,
Hmm.
to make it easy. What are the top 5 fantastic things that you love about being a
Hmm.
father?
Top 5.
Top 5. I know. We can keep it open to top 10 if it's easier.
No, no, no. I'm just like,
Yeah,
it's really interesting because like I don't categorize things in my head quite like that. I mean, I'm a
sure.
very in the moment person. Like I don't
Yeah.
hold on to things for very long. I do think about
Mm,
a lot of things, but I'll think about them when
mm.
I'm thinking about them, and then I don't think about them anymore.
Well,
um,
wow.
so,
Yeah,
so I've never categorized it all. Like I love seeing I love watching my sons win. And what I mean by win is like figure stuff out. And like
yeah,
when I watch my sons like learn how to climb or like climb up a ladder and fall off and then try again, or
yeah,
like I watch my 5-year-old, watch his brothers learn how to sink to the bottom of the pool and walk across with weights. And then I watch
yeah,
him like tinker with it and almost drown the first time and then try it the second time and the third time and then gets it. And then all of a sudden, like, he's super capable. And like, so I just love watching them win. And winning happens every day. Like you watch them catch a lizard for the first time. You watch them, cook their own egg for the first time or be in charge of bacon or like those kinds of things are like the peak. And it happens every day. Like it happens on a micro level. Like I watch my 18-month-old when he was first learning like how to use his fingers. You watch him grab food and grab a blueberry precisely, and you watch him grab it precisely and not squish it and then like pull it to his mouth and eat. And it's like it's miraculous. And it's just this it's life. It's life happening. And it's a similar thing as a coach. Like when you're a coach and you
yeah,
you you coach adults to be capable, you watch them
yeah,
have these wins, and those wins have, hey, do you remember when you first came in you could not hang from a pull-up bar and all of a sudden they're doing pull-ups and you're like, it's been
yeah,
8 months, but do you remember that? And it's like this really deep amazing feeling, but it takes 8 months. Kids, it's every day. If you're paying attention, it's every day you're getting wins. And it's not
mm,
without struggle, but like I would say that is the top, is just watching my children win. And like even to
mm,
the point where like watching them actually win, like go out and play a sport and win. Like I love when they try really hard. That's awesome. But I also
yeah,
love for them when they win, because it's like, dude, that's awesome. Like
yeah,
my second son, he struggles a bit with communication, and he
yeah.
he he doesn't quite read super well yet. And so kids his age, he's 8, like they don't
Okay.
they don't like he's not quite as book learned as his brother. He doesn't handle social situations with as much grace, but he is a
Yeah.
physical beast. Like when he was 5, he did a 7-minute pull-up bar hang, like
Let's go.
he like, and he'll go play soccer, and he'll in his games he scores 8 goals where everyone else, and then like is just loves it. And then he goes and he stands in the goals and plays goalie, and like and it's just he's into it. And he just went and did junior lifeguards because they're doing that this time of year. And he
Yeah,
woke up in the morning. He's like, I'm gonna win some of the events today. I'm like, good. Like, hey, just to I don't know how he's gonna do. I'm like, hey,
right.
I love you, man. Absolutely. If you win him, you win him. If you don't, I just care that you try hard. Um, and he goes out and he's like dominates, like 200 yards in the lead in the run swim run. He starts and
Awesome.
finishes the race for the relay, and their team just dominates. And it's just like you watch them come into their own as little beings. And
Yeah.
the same way I love watching my oldest son start to get into the same fantasy novels that I read and just like these characters
Nice.
and just win there. And you're like, this is awesome. My 5-year-old, I play like set with him. Set is this game that like you've got these shapes and stuff and you match them. And the little
Yeah.
turd is starting to beat me. He's starting to beat me in set, and I'm like, I'm pretty good at games, and he's starting to beat me. And it's just like watching
Oh
them
man.
win. Watching them win is my joy. Um,
So,
and watching them play and watching them navigate the world. I think that's number 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. But I would say beyond that, I love watching their social interactions. So
yeah.
watching them develop as people with each other and navigate things,
Mm,
and build like compassion and empathy and look out for others earlier on in life. And like watching my oldest son set the example for my second and third son and watch how they do it. Like little payoffs. Like I
yeah.
was I go out every morning and I have coffee and I sit on the couch and I'll usually read to them or something like that.
Yeah.
But my kids will slowly wake up. Like we're out there with the baby at like 6 a.m. and they'll slowly wake up 6:30, 7, 8. Um,
Yeah.
and I always have a cup of coffee, and I'll usually be getting a second. And my oldest son, just the other day, he woke up and he like walked out and he went to sit on the couch and he looked over at my coffee cup and he was like, "You want some more coffee?" I'm like, "Sure." And he walks over, he gets me the coffee pot. He didn't need anything over there. He just poured me some more coffee, went and put it back, and he came down, sat, and started reading his book. And I'm like, it just
Love it, bud.
like, it just was like, yeah, buddy. Like, you're not
Yeah.
looking out for just you. You're looking out for the world. You're seeing how you can help. You're seeing how you can be of service. And it's like, those things
Yep.
happen. And it takes time. It took
The
11
win.
years. It was
Yeah.
11 years before that happened. But when it happened, it was like you note it and you see it and you're like, holy crap. Like, this is awesome. So just, I guess all of it boils down to watching them develop, and helping and taking pride in that process. And then also simultaneously not taking yourself too seriously. It's like, you're just a human. You don't know, like, you don't know what you're really doing. You're just kind of winging it. So try to find joy in it if you can.
That's right. Pat, you mean the myth of the fathers and mothers and parents knowing all is not
Oh,
real?
no, it's not
No?
real. Sorry. I hate to break it to you.
I knew it. I hate to break. There you go. I got to call my dad. I got to call him right now. I knew it. I always knew it. I called him, Dad. When you see this episode, I knew.
But isn't
Pat
it
told me.
fascinating though? Like, I
Yeah.
think a lot of parents feel like they do need to know it all, and they speak as though they understand the world perfectly. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's wild to me. And I think when we get into ideologies, and even when we get into belief structures, the force with which a parent will be like, this is how it is, it is
Yeah.
like, you're only setting them up for distrust when they figure out that it's only partially true what you said.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's you don't need to be wishy-washy on it, but you can be like, I
Yeah.
believe that this kind of thing happens, and here's my reasoning. And then they get to go, but what about this?
Yeah.
And you go, okay, well, I think not that because of da 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 da. And it's
Right.
like, I don't know. I just don't understand I don't understand how you can speak with such certainty about nearly anything. Like, again,
I agree.
I'm an incredible professional at fitness, and I will tell you why something is more effective or less effective, but it's all awesome, like,
Yeah.
and even
Yeah.
within that, I'm totally willing to be wrong. Like, if
Yeah.
you show me that I don't have the right idea about something. So when my kids ask me about fitness, I'm going to be like, well, what do you want to do? And we have to have that conversation, almost ask the questions to pull out what their thoughts on it are. I don't know. I
Yeah.
I think we set ourselves up for failure as parents when we speak as the unequivocal way of doing things.
Yeah. It's a challenge in the truest sense, right? If anyone ever says that they're an expert on something, I usually tend to kind of walk the other way. I'm with you. Like I'm with you, right? It's like no. You might be really learned in a certain area or category, though those are all circumstantial moments that were 100% nuance of those particular things. We'll circle all the way back to science when we said that before. It's not the end all be all. We're all figuring this out. It is a trial and error, stumble and fall, pick it up and figure it out again. Life doesn't get easier. We just get stronger kind of lifestyle. And I think this is a good spot in the sense that kind of we talked about the top 5 that we love in that regard, and we're kind of inching our way into at least a piece of it with one of the mythologies that is wrong, that we all know that is wrong, that parents are supposed to know everything. Being someone, I'll take a humble step back. So being someone who's straddling the sphere as a coach who is doing life coaching and then also physical fitness, competing in bodybuilding, and then also doing mental fitness for individuals and helping them out through their own pains and that type of idea. Hence the Rough Sketch Final Draft family that's created itself within the past 15 months of my life. I had a whole entire corporate career that way and that way and otherwise. And this just kind of all started to gestate because people wanted this information. I resonate with you about how your community just kind of manifested. Would have known, but then people wanted this. So in that regard, being humble and now asking another amazing creator in that simple sense of how this is, what is one of maybe the biggest myths about fatherhood that might kind of get under your skin, that is something that gets to you, and the truth that you really figured out that wasn't what you were told, and one of those main ones out there in that regard? We talked about obviously being the know-it-alls in that regard, but what is another one in that sense that really, really kind of grinds your gears and gets you in there, and that you learned something about in that sense?
I guess I'll have to think a bit on what myths were told to me around fatherhood.
Yeah. And that since you've been able to dispel and found out that that wasn't the fact, that wasn't the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I know. A heavier question an hour into the interview.
What was that?
I said, I know. A heavier question an hour into the interview. Forgive me.
No. I'm just trying to, again, like, even I'm trying to think of what are some myths that I even thought about back then, like,
No.
I went into this with such an open mind because I never had any desire. I wasn't like a guy who was like, I want to be a dad, so I'm going to examine
Yeah,
fatherhood. I was so
sure.
self-absorbed in what I was doing that I never like paid attention to fathers. Like, I had a pretty good father. Like, I had a great father. He was relatively he let me
Yeah.
be me. He he helped me when I needed help. He modeled kindness. He did so many things that were just wonderful. So I didn't have like a preconceived notion.
Mm.
Um, I I I think one of the the I guess one of the ones that rubs me the wrong way and that
Yeah.
I see is like this idea that there's a need to be uh, stoic and quiet around your kids, but then have a
Mm.
lot of other stuff going on. So like
Yeah.
to not bring up trouble, or to not express weakness, or to not like
Got it.
communicate and just do these things. Like, I see a lot of people whose mom and dad would like never ever disagree
Yeah.
in the same room, or like, and they live this entire like separate life relative
Mm.
to the kids, and then
Nice.
when the kids find out about it later, they're like, what the fuck? Like, it was like, what
Yeah.
you were doing what behind the hood? Like,
Blindsided.
it that
Yeah.
separation of like communication and the reality of life. Like, there's no need to be perfect. Like,
Yeah.
the obviously don't have like be a
Mm.
good person and
Yeah.
be smart, and there's time to be like, hey, we're going to talk about this later. I don't want to talk about this right now, but like, for the
Yeah.
most part, I think all of those things can happen relatively in the open. And
Mm.
I also think, like, this was modeled for me, and I still believe this, is like, you should be able to question your parents. Like, you should be able to be
Yeah.
like, why are we doing this? And then if you don't have a good reason, then you as a parent should need to be like, well, I don't really have a good reason. And if you don't have a good reason, then you probably shouldn't do it. Like, but if
Yeah.
you do have a good reason, then you say,
Yeah.
here's my good reason. And they'll be like, I don't agree with that reason. And you go, that's okay if you don't agree with it. It's my reason. It's a good one. We're
Yeah.
going to still do it. But if you say, I don't know, that's like a totally different thing. Like, hey, hats
True.
off at the dinner table. And they're like,
Yeah.
why? And they're like, well, because it's rude. Well, how's it rude?
Right.
And then they're like, well, because I was raised that way. It's like, but how's it rude? How's it rude to have it? Well, because I can't see your eyes. Oh, you want to see my
Mm.
eyes? Oh, I get it.
Round.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
if you don't get there, if you just say because I
Yeah.
said so, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Come
Right.
on, man. Um,
Yeah.
it's
I
it's
like
it's
that.
just how you get teenagers to not take you seriously, is like have arbitrary rules that you don't discuss and you don't have any reason behind, and it was just how you were raised. So I would say one of the things that I one of the bigger myths is like I think you should be able to have an open dialogue with your children. I think you should have
Mm.
an open dialogue with your wife, and proper communication and realistic human interactions.
Amen.
But again, I didn't believe that because it wasn't really, it was modeled for me. Like, my father modeled that for me, but it's something that I still see, and I go like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
wonder why there's dissonance there and your kids don't trust you. It's because there's two sides to you, like,
Right. Yeah. 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 You got to earn that trust. Yeah.
for sure.
I like that. I love that, actually. I really, really do. All right. Well, good sir. That's a humongous one in that regard. If we were going to, this is always kind of the thing towards the end of the episode, I always want to give back to my guests in that sense, at least even just a moment of an anecdotal phrase, maybe an idiom, maybe something that's on your heart today that you want to share. I always like you to be able to have the opportunity because this is a gift that you are giving to us with your presence. Is there a particular message? This is going to be on the internet. Once on the internet, it's on there forever. That you want this episode to be something that resonates for all time? Is there something today that you want to have this episode feel complete, and it wouldn't feel complete unless you said this? Is there something that you would like to say now for the audience?
I mean, I'll give you two.
All right.
Just
You're
one,
spoiling us.
one because it just came up
Okay.
in it was a video I watched separately, and I was like, this is so applicable to parenting. And then the other,
Yeah.
which is just kind of my family motto, and it's been our motto for a long time.
Yeah.
The first one is it was the list of 3 things for unreasonable hospitality. And hospitality, the difference between hospitality and service. Service is what you do for someone. Hospitality is how you make them feel. So there's a difference between hospitality and service. And the guy who wrote Unreasonable Hospitality, this is in the business frame. The 3 big points were: number 1, be present. Number 2, create, what was it? It was number 2, it was don't take yourself too seriously. And number 3, it was create a unique experience or an individualized experience. So, and I think in the sense of fatherhood and parenting, being present is quite essential for not only you to do well by the kid, but actually you to get joy from this process. If you're not present, you're going to reflect back and be like, what did I miss? But if you are present, that's not going to happen. Number 2, which is don't take yourself too seriously. You can take what you do seriously, parenting and fatherhood and all this stuff, but don't take yourself too seriously, because you're going to be slighted so many times by the little things that are said and done, but it's not personal. It's just usually a reflection of your own inadequacies being mirrored at you by your kids. So don't take yourself too seriously. Take it relatively lighthearted, but take what you do seriously. And then the last one of creating the individualized experience. No kid is a template. No kid is the same as the other one. Even if you have multiple kids, you need to meet the kids where they're at and figure out exactly what they need and have an individualized interaction. So that 3-step thing of be present, don't take yourself too seriously, and create an individualized experience, I was like, that's magical for fatherhood. so that one's really good. And then my little family motto is, it's been ours for a while, is try to take all the actions through the lens of being harder to kill and easier to love. So the 2 sides of the coin are: 1, you want to be somebody who is both physiologically and emotionally resilient to the point where you can face very difficult things because that's what life requires of you. So this means that you need to do difficult things on purpose, often both physically and also face challenges like telling the truth and being honest, and do all of that within the guards of being harder to kill and learning stuff and becoming more capable as a man, as a person, as a father. But then on the other side of that is being easier to love and making sure that you're continuing to learn how to communicate well, ask for help when needed, and be in those places, being able to express your own, love and care and feelings in a way that it can be heard, and be constantly working through this lens of being somebody that someone wants to be around. Because it can't just be one side or the other. You have to be both harder to kill and easier to love. And that's been our family motto for a while.
Pat, I love that.
Cool, man.
Such a joy, my friend. Absolutely. We've gone through a journey of when it began in this whole entire understanding of CrossFit Games in your career and getting started. And you've been a fitness goer and a doer, and you found yourself and you became an amazing father. You're role modeling it for other people. You had this career in the sphere of fitness, and that translated into becoming a coach, led into being a great mentor and a great leader and a great individual to obviously look up to in that sense in so many different capacities. You touched my heart. And I am telling this amazing community, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, or if you're getting a chance to watch this and see this incredible human being in front of me, go find him. He is incredible. I tell you this from my heart. But Pat, tell these people where to find you. I knew where to find you. Tell them where to find you in case they're listening to it on Spotify.
You can find me mainly on Instagram as The Father's Guild. And you can go to thefathersguild.com. It'll link you to all the different places too. So feel free to find me there.
There we go. Pat, again, thank you so much, and to this amazing family. We love you for tuning in. Subscribe and like and share, and we love you so much. Thank you, fam. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Preach at all times, but if necessary, use words.
love that.
Reach at all times and necessarily use words.
Here's on your heart.
Thank you. What's on my heart is what's in my heart, which is just
Emotional sense and in a professional sense.
I would say the first thing is professional. I'll talk to that. I think one of the